The Heisman Trophy finalists have been announced for 2024, and I think there's a glaring omission. I think that there is somebody that deserves to be at the Heisman Trophy ceremony that isn't going to be there. And I understand the idea from the Heisman, the Downtown Athletic Club, that they don't want to turn this into a participation trophy because it should mean something. It does mean something. If you win the Heisman Trophy, that goes down in history as like forever. The rest of your life, you are insert name here, Heisman Trophy winner. And that's a big deal, and it should be a big deal. And for some guys, it's insert name here was a Heisman Trophy finalist. And so I understand the idea that you don't want it to be 5 dudes every year, 6 dudes every year. If there's some year where it's very clear that there's only 3 people who might even be really in the running, I understand that. But I think that the Heisman Trophy holds a little bit of enough significance in the college football world that it has kind of its own special little place, and that what it does matters. I also, just for transparency's sake, every Sunday I do the Sunday Stiff Arm Trophy update, and I forgot to do this yesterday. So I'll tell you what my Heisman ballot looks like. But I think Arizona State running back Cam Skattebo deserves a trip to New York. I think what he has accomplished this season deserves a trip to the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Stop. Full stop, bar none. That if you were to ask me who the top 5 vote getters are, and maybe Cam Skattebo is number 5 in the voting, and he's not as close to Miami quarterback Cam Ward, Oregon quarterback Dylan Gabriel, Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty, and Colorado wide receiver and defensive back Travis Hunter, which is, I think, the order in which they will finish. Cam Ward will be 4th, Dylan Gabriel will be 3rd, Ashton Jeanty will be 2nd, and Travis Hunter will win the Heisman Trophy. If Cam Skattebo is number 5, which I imagine he is, I think he deserves a trip because what he has done. I mentioned in the conference championship preview show last week that I think Arizona State is kind of just Cam Skattebo, not a whole lot else. And after watching that championship game, it didn't do anything to disparage that thought. It is Cam Skattebo and then 10 other guys on the field at times where he is so good, so dominant, so unable to be stopped that like they can't do anything but hand that fella the football. And when you get to that point, when that's the stage you're at, where it's like everybody in America knows you're about to get the ball, including the 11 guys across the line of scrimmage from you, and you still get the ball and you're still successful, I put a high value on that. And so when you have carried a program who is not traditionally great to the college football playoffs, and not even to the college football playoffs, to a bye in the college football playoff, I think that deserves to be rewarded. I think that deserves to be recognized because for better or worse, we will forget a lot of what happened in the 2024 college football season. In fact, we'll forget the overwhelming majority of what happened in the 2024 college football season. But one of the ways you tell the story of what happened during this year is by looking back and seeing who were the Heisman Trophy finalists. What happened? Because as I mentioned before, there's not almost assured way to get to the Heisman Trophy ceremony than being the quarterback of the number 1 team in the country. Is Dylan Gabriel a better college football player than Cam Skattebo is this year? My answer to that would be no. But Dylan Gabriel's absolutely going to go to New York because he's the quarterback of the best team in the country. And so that's part of the story. If Oregon doesn't win the national championship, that's going to be one of the ways we remember, oh yeah, that was the year Oregon went 13-0 in the Big Ten, in their first year in the Big Ten, and wins the conference. How do you remember that? Well, Dylan Gabriel was a Heisman Trophy finalist that year. And so when that is one of the ways that you remember the history of the sport, I think one of the things we should remember about 2024 is that Arizona State was in the first year in a new conference. They were picked to finish 16th out of 16 in their conference. They win the whole damn league. How do you remember that? Oh, yeah, because Cam Skattebo was a Heisman Trophy finalist. And so I think he deserves and deserved a trip to New York. Now, I don't agree with him with his comments after the game on Saturday that I'm the best running back in America. Nobody respects that fact. And as long as nobody respects that, I'm going to keep performing at this level, because you're not. You're not better than Ashton Jeanty. Your production doesn't show that. Your future NFL earnings don't show that. Ashton Jeanty is the best running back in the country, and that's okay. But if that's the chip you're going to carry on your shoulder and that continues to produce for you, I think that's a good thing for Cam Skattebo to wear. Skattebo to wear. And so I just think overall the Heisman Trophy trust needs to be cognizant kind of that fact that if you're going to go back someday and look at the history of 2024 in a snapshot in the college football season, what did 2024 look like? What did it mean? What were the big takeaways? I think one of those things is Cam Skattebo leads Arizona State to the college football playoff in a bye and an expanded college football playoff. This is kind of like one of those landmark years in college football that we will look back at as 2024 was the start of a new era or the beginning of the end or whatever the case may be. This season will go down as a pivotal year in the history of the sport. And so I think 5 people deserve to be in New York. And I think you could argue 6 people, because I don't think enough people watch Army to know that their starting quarterback has as many rushing touchdowns as Ashton Jeanty does. And during an 11-1 campaign where the only loss they have is to a team that is playing in the college football playoff, that's been an impressive season. And I think a lot of people will watch on Saturday when Army plays Navy, and they'll go, holy hell, I could have been watching this guy all season. But he's a system quarterback. He's a product of the system, which he's never, really lobbied at blue blood Power 4 programs anymore. But that's a different discussion for a different day. But I think overall, Cam Skattebo deserves a trip to New York is kind of the moral of my story. I've told you time after time after time who I would vote for if I had a Heisman Trophy ballot. I would like one, but this is what my ballot would look like. My final Heisman Trophy ballot, if I got a vote, and what it would have looked like before the due date, before the test was ready to end, this is what it would look like. I would have Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty as my Heisman Trophy winner. And there are a couple of things that go into that for me. The first is that when I think there are goats of goats, right? Like there is the greatest of all time, but the greatest of all time. Wayne Gretzky is the greatest of all time. In football, if you go position by position, Barry Sanders is the greatest of all time. And Ashton Jeanty is reaching Barry Sanders levels. And so when you are nearing numbers put up by the GOAT of GOATs, I think that earns you strong consideration for the Heisman Trophy. And so I would vote for Ashton Jeanty to win the Heisman Trophy. Travis Hunter has come on strong at the end of the season. He had a big game in the last couple of weeks of the year. I think that if you put, and I don't necessarily like to operate this way, if you put Ashton Jeanty on Colorado's roster, Colorado is probably in the college football playoff, because their one big problem was Shedeur Sanders just had to run like a chicken with his head cut off a lot because they had no running game and the offensive line wasn't very good. If you put Travis Hunter on Boise State, are they a college football playoff team? I don't know that the answer to that question is yes. Travis Hunter also is getting the benefit of playing with potentially a top 5 overall pick in the NFL drafted quarterback. And I've used this argument before, that when people will say to you, yeah, Ashton Jeanty has been impressive, but Ashton Jeanty performs against Mountain West defenses, and they're not very good. That very well could be true. Ashton Jeanty also has Mountain West offensive linemen blocking for him. He also has a Mountain West quarterback that doesn't take any pressure off of him offensively. You go into a Boise State game, you have one mission. We have to stop Ashton Jeanty. And 13 times out, nobody's really done that. Consistency, consistent excellence, to me, means that Ashton Jeanty deserves the Heisman Trophy. And I put Cam Skattebo at number 3. Similarly to Jeanty, the other team knows what the hell's coming at him, and it's that battering horn of a human being. And yet, he continues to produce, and has put the team on his back and drug Arizona State to the college football playoff. So I would vote him number 3. I'd probably put Dylan Gabriel 4, Cam Ward 5, and Bryson Daly of Army, the quarterback, at 6. That's what my Heisman Trophy ballot would look like. What would yours look like? Did Cam Skattebo deserve a trip to New York, or am I just all sensitive in my feels? Let me know in the comments down below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.